I made a video a little while back about how to secure and attract your first luxury client, but I never talked about like, well, once you get them, how should you take care of them, right? How should you handle it? I think a lot of people in real estate, it's like the idea of the dog chasing the car. Once you get to it, you don't really know what you're going to do. I think because there's likely a higher commission or a higher payday associated with a luxury client compared to, say, a first-time home buyer, it feels like there's a bit more pressure, right? A little bit more pressure to perform at a high level. And I think that's true. I think that is a pretty natural pressure. And it doesn't necessarily just have to do with the fact that they're spending more money, but because they're likely more savvy clients for, having got into a position to be a luxury client in the first place. And I've been lucky enough to help quite a few clients who would fall into that luxury category, luxury price point. And the truth is, I don't think it's that complicated. How's it going, y'all? My name is Jesse Lynch. I run multiple real estate teams around the United States. And what I'm trying to do here in general is help people change the outcome of their life, change the circumstances of their life through, the lever that is being a real estate agent, real estate in general. And really, I'm interested in working with people who want to do things differently and want to do things on their own terms. So if that's you, come hang out for a while, subscribe to the channel, and if it's not, I guess just keep it moving. I think there are plenty of other people who are doing things in a more traditional sense as it relates to real estate. I would say most people are doing things in a very traditional sense, and that's not really what I'm doing here. And like I said, I don't think luxury clients are really that much different than, let's say, a first-time home buyer or a step-up buyer, somebody who's more in the sweet spot of where the market sits. A lot of it has to do with your internal expectations and potentially their internal expectations. It depends on how they think about themselves, right? Do they think of themselves as a luxury buyer who ought to be treated like a luxury buyer? And do they think they ought to be treated as such? I think a lot of the luxury clients that I've attracted are not all particularly hoity-toity or high and mighty, right? They are luxury clients, but they're super down-to-earth people. And that's what I've chosen to attract, right? Is a type of person who, while they maybe have money, they might even be like a reluctant luxury client. That is the kind of person that I'm trying to attract in everything I do, in all of my marketing, in all of my branding. It's a pretty chill, down-to-earth individual, and that carries over to the luxury side of things. And so at the very core of that, it's kind of like understand who you're attracting, right? If you want to work with really, really type A, super elite luxury clients, well then all of your marketing and all that has to adapt to that, right? It has to be talking to that kind of person. And so then when that client comes in, you should know that you've attracted a person who wants to be treated that way. And so I think a lot of it is just about knowing who it is, who you're attracted. And I don't necessarily treat my luxury clients that different than I do somebody who's right in the sweet spot of the market, because I do a really, really good job for the people who are in the sweet spot of the market, and I do a really, really good job for the luxury client. There just are certain things and certain needs and certain ways of being handled that somebody with a higher net worth or somebody who is a really high-performing business professional might want to be handled or is just used to being talked to. So it's about knowing the type of person that you've likely attracted to work with you. And then the other part is just kind of about confidence. Let me be clear, I don't mean confidence in the sense of con man. I don't mean fake it till you make it. I understand the sort of the desire to fake it till you make it, right? Because it sort of feels like it could be a cheat code to arrive at somewhere that you're not yet prepared to arrive at. But when I say confidence, I mean make sure that you're in a place where you've acquired the skills to where you can handle the things that come up with a luxury client, right? You can handle the questions that they're going to throw at you. And if I boil it down, I think it's because you ultimately have to get to the reason of why is a luxury client more intimidating than a client who doesn't fit into the luxury mold. And I think a lot of it is because there's a perceived and honestly probably a realistic likelihood that they are going to be more savvy, right? And so how can you have the confidence to take care of a client who's more savvy? It's by being more savvy yourself. And so what are the things that you have to study? How do you become more savvy? And For one, some of it is experience, right? I don't know that day one in real estate, it would be a good idea to take a luxury client on your own. And so really that whole question is, and probably the crux of this video is like, well, how do you become savvy in the things that would matter to a luxury client? And I think one of those things is experience, right? But I don't want to just say like, just do real estate longer and then eventually you get there. Because I think the truth is that there are people who have been in real estate for decades who wouldn't be particularly suited to help a luxury client. And so why is that, right? If it's not just time, what are the other little intangible aspects of helping a luxury client? And so one really important thing I think is understanding the wants and needs of a luxury client, right? And so specifically, what makes a home luxury? What makes a neighborhood luxury? If somebody has that kind of budget, what differentiates, you know, a $1 million house from a $1.5 million house? Sometimes that can not be completely obvious to somebody. And so if you just were looking at two listings on the MLS and one was 1 million and one was 1.5, if you didn't know, you know, nuances of neighborhood, nuances of schools, nuances of just why one neighborhood would be more expensive than another, there can be two identical homes in two different neighborhoods that have that big of a difference. Same builder, same exact floor plan, super similar lot, but in a different area. And so why would one be 1.5 and one would be 1? And that's just something that you have to study, right? You have to look at enough homes, both in person and online. You have to understand the neighborhoods and what are the metrics that make a neighborhood. In Minnesota, a neighborhood that comes to mind is called Wayzata, right? Wayzata is known as the #1 school district in Minnesota. It's in the top 50 school districts in the entire country, and it's extremely desirable. But there are also other neighborhoods within the Wayzata school district, other suburbs within the Wayzata school district that are served by those same schools, and they're still ranked really, really highly. But then there are examples of some of those suburbs. Let's say Plymouth, Minnesota. That's just an example of where there's a huge disparity between the most expensive homes in Plymouth and the most affordable homes in Plymouth. And almost always it's related to what school district they're in. And so school district is massive for people, right? It's not the only thing that matters, but it is a really important thing. So let's imagine that you're in a place in the same suburb with the same school district, but one house is a bit more expensive than the other, and understanding why might that be. In Minnesota, a common trend for something like that is that maybe the neighborhood is more developed, right? The neighborhood is a little bit more mature in terms of its trees, right? Is it more forested? Is there more water around? Or is it a new build community where all of the houses have little sapling trees? It's really, really common that a luxury home owner, a luxury home buyer, doesn't want to live in a new build community where they have to put up with 10 years of sapling growth. Or you can have a house that's 10 minutes east of another house, and for some reason that's way more expensive. And often the reason is that it's closer to the city, right? If that cuts down 10 minutes at least on a commute, then that's going to be really, really valuable to somebody, especially somebody who has the money to pay for it. As you make more and more money, time becomes extremely valuable. And you start to run those numbers of, well, how much is 10 minutes a day worth to me over the course of a 30-year loan, right? That's a crazy piece of arithmetic to ask of somebody, but it ultimately just comes down to gut feeling and just like how a person perceives those things. And so it's kind of just those big picture, like almost impossible to rectify things that can make a home more valuable to somebody who has a really, really good budget. Time is a big one, and valuing a person's time above more than money, right? It is probably a trend that exists within the luxury world. When you're helping a luxury client, their time is super valuable. So you have to do your very best not to waste any time. You have to basically fall on the grenade for them in saving them time of maybe going out to a house that you could have looked into before they got to that house and realized that it wouldn't have been a good fit, right? Maybe texting over an aerial view that shows that it's next to something that would be a deal breaker for them, right? And understanding those deal breakers and just making sure that you're going out of your way to save them the time for looking at something that, again, you could have already nipped in the bud. And so becoming an expert on areas that are maybe more attractive to luxury clients, that's going to be a big one, right? That's really understanding the nuance of those areas that will be super, super important to a lot of different clients. But then I think understanding within the home, the elements that make something luxury. I will admit that when I first started in real estate, an $800,000 house felt like pretty much like a luxury home to me. Like, I've always liked nice homes, right? I've always been drawn to that. But really understanding the scale and the differences between maybe $1 million home and like a $3 million home, other than just sheer size, trying to figure out exactly what it is that makes a home, you know, that much more valuable. Obviously lot size, location, that stuff, but there are things within the home that people will pay more money for and that people will value at a really high level. Some of that is finished work, some of that is, you know, higher quality floors, higher quality countertops, custom cabinetry, right? Higher quality windows and doors and framing, right? And foundations, higher quality heating systems, higher quality HVAC systems and roofing systems. I'm still surprised by some of this stuff to this day. The other day I saw a house that was getting a new slate roof on it. It was a $2 million house. It was getting a slate roof on it. The roof cost $700,000. That is still shocking to me, and I didn't know that a roof on a house could cost $700,000. I think there are resources out there that are speaking to really high level design, really high level build. And that's the stuff that you gotta focus on. That's the stuff that you have to educate yourself on. HGTV is great, but that's middle America, the average home, right? Even the nicest stuff on HGTV is typically more middle of the road. Not to say that there's not really, really nice stuff on HGTV, but there are maybe other channels, and I don't just mean TV channels, but other avenues to get information through. Some of it's basically just on YouTube, right? There's a thing called The Local Project, if you haven't heard of that. Really, really cool home tours of like unbelievable homes built with pretty unbelievable technology and all that stuff woven into it. There's a show based in the UK and New Zealand called Grand Designs. I think that's like a fun like TV show to watch of people building really insane custom homes and sort of the challenges that face those people. That can help you get into the mindset of a luxury client as well. Also Architectural Designs, or AD, that's a magazine. It's also a YouTube channel. They do really, really crazy home tours of famous people, but also just really interesting homes, right? They're into the architectural aspect of homes, and you can learn a lot about building materials, what makes a home hard to build, and so what also might make a home more valuable or perceived as more valuable because it's rare, because it was so difficult to achieve. Personally, I think it'd be really hard to be a luxury real estate agent without being like a fan of architecture, a fan of real estate, a fan of home. I'm really interested in design from an architectural standpoint, from an interior design standpoint. I just like really, really enjoy it. And I think it is almost a prerequisite to help a luxury client. I think you have to be into that stuff. Maybe you could hate it, but still know what you're talking about. I don't know why you do this job. If you're willing to learn all that, I think there are probably other jobs you could learn and be pretty good at, because I think at the end of the day, you just actually have to really like and really appreciate luxury, and you will eventually, you'll work your way up to that. But because you're a fan of the design and the architecture, and you're gonna start seeing cooler and cooler homes, it might ruin like middle of the road houses for you a little bit. But you just have to separate those in your mind, right? You have to understand that you have clients who are in the middle of the road, first-time home buyers or step-up, who have more modest means, and you can still help luxury buyers. If you're eventually in a spot where you can only help luxury buyers and you own a luxury home, then maybe it's fine that you've ruined more modest homes for yourself. But I do think there's kind of a through line there to the next thought, which is that you have to understand all this stuff. You have to become savvy at high-end stuff. You have to understand how high-end people think, but you still have to be authentic. The idea of being authentic is something that I live and die by, especially as it comes to marketing and branding. I think it's just so much easier to be yourself. And I think if you're ever afraid to be yourself, you're ever afraid you're going to lose a client because you're being yourself, then you are attracting the wrong clients. And while maybe a difficult lesson to learn, I think it would be an important lesson to learn. And so in that same through line of not being afraid to lose a client because you're being yourself, I think your sort of standard of service has to be, you know, at least as good as when you're helping a non-luxury client. Like, you have to protect them and be brutal and be honest about a property in the same way. You can't have more commission breath because you're helping a higher end client. You have to be okay letting any deal die if it's in the best interest of that client. You have to understand that in order for a person to arrive in a situation, a financial situation, to where they are a luxury client, they would have had to have seen some shit, right? And their bullshit detector is probably going to be better than that of you know, somebody who isn't, right? Because they've worked their way to get to that situation. Gary Vee had a quote that I really liked, which was just, if you're chasing money, you're going to lose. And I think that's true. At my very core of how I run my real estate team, it's about volume, but not dollar amount volume. It's in total number of people helped. That's what I'm always chasing, is helping more and more people. And so if breaking into the luxury realm allows me to help more people, then cool, then that's what I want to do, right? But if that's the North Star, helping more people, it shouldn't change because you're suddenly working with a luxury client and there's a bigger commission on the line. In fact, I think probably that's where you go, oh right, that is my North Star, and that's got to be number one. And so I think it all boils back down to confidence. Again, confidence to know what you're talking about, but then throughout the process, confident that you're giving them enough of a service that you're not afraid of losing them because you do something to operate in their best interest, right? Think of every relationship you've ever either been in or witnessed, right? You've ever been a witness to, whether that's your friends, your parents, your family members, or anything like that, or just anything on TV. The person in the relationship who cares the most, who's most afraid of something falling apart, has basically none of the power, right? All they can do is just hope that that person sticks around. But if you realize, if you understand that we are an equal partnership and we are both contributing to each other in a way that benefits each other equally, and not just dollar to dollar, right? But like, there's an exchange, an equal exchange, and we're partners along the same path, headed to the same ultimate goal, working on the same mission. In real estate, it should be that way too, right? They have the means to purchase a thing. You have the skill to represent them in the purchase of those things. And so knowing with complete confidence that you are worth the cost, you are worth the price of admission, that's what it takes. And so the only way to do that is through work, and it's through effort, and it's through acquiring knowledge. So if you aren't in a place where you would feel comfortable doing that, then start doing it. Start watching those high-end videos, start reading magazines where they're talking about architecture and high-end design and things like that. But then also start studying your market, start studying the cost of homes in different areas, start studying the schools. If you don't know those things, it'd be very difficult to help somebody navigate a home purchase unless all they need you for is the contract, at which point then you're probably not worth the price of admission.